Welcome to Circle of Hearts Radio. Journey with Grandmother Allayah as she enters her magical world of relics, sacred sites, and ancient crystal skulls. Meet with exciting trailblazer authors and individuals shifting the consciousness of humanity. Send her your questions to be answered on air on her monthly segment, Ask the Oracle. And now your host, Grandmother Allayah, in the sanctuary on the airwaves on OMTimes Radio.
Welcome to Circle of Hearts Radio on OMTimes Media. I am Allayah, your host for this hour. Today, I'm really excited to bring on a very trailblazing author, Chris Dunn. His work has totally expanded my perception of ancient Egypt. I've always been interested in the spiritual and thought it was an interesting culture. And always took a lot of things for granted. Whatever was presented in the media as, let's say for instance, the pyramids. Oh, they're tombs, there's mummies, you see it in the movies. You just think, oh, this is the way it is. And then you come across information that totally wipes that out and changes your mind. And really, his books are a wealth of knowledge, as his website. And I was just telling Chris, I've been up at 4 o'clock this morning discussing this work with my husband, who's also very left-brained and understands manufacturing and, processes and stuff. So I'm a little bit brain fried at the moment, but I'm going to bring on Chris Dunn. And how you doing, Chris?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Allayah. How are you?
Oh, I told you I'm a little brain fried at the moment. But there's a lot of information to come to bring out, and we, only have an hour, and I'd like to just be able to at least get a few of the basics and about the Giza pyramid plant, and also about the temples and the statuary and where geometry plays and precision that I never really thought about before. So I'm going to go by some of the questions you had given me because they're great focus. To start off, if the pyramids were not tombs, then what are they? I think the average person, like myself, who's been interested in Egypt, has always associated pyramids with the mummies and the tombs. And when you went there, it's something different. Go ahead.
Well, and that has been basically the narrative for as long as I've been alive and before. And it's been fairly well cemented in our consciousness through the media, because most of the films that were made about Egypt in the past dealt with the pyramids being tombs. And indeed, a lot of modern documentaries that are produced by conventional scholars describe them as being tombs also.
I think in one of your books that you had mentioned, they like to keep this perception because of tourism. But I was thinking, if people become aware of the science, the precision, and see them as energy pieces, that would even bring out more people to investigate them. All right, we should be live on air, and hopefully, Chris, you're with me now?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, we'll try. This is interesting. This happens every once in a while with some really interesting topics. Like I had Lars Scranton. Same thing happens to him. He goes, this happens. I don't know whether we blow, the thing, energy away. But I know shortly we're going to be going into commercial break, so it'll give us a chance to regroup and get back to the subject on hand. So
Yeah,
hopefully Skype stays with us.
hope so.
Okay. Um, like I said, usually in about a few more minutes, hopefully that we'll hear the commercial break. But we should be live, so we were actually talking about um,
We
the
were talking, we were talking about the current perception or the belief that the powers that be maintain the tomb theory because of the money it brings out for tourism. And you made the comment that if the truth were known, or what we believe to be the truth, at least what I believe to be the truth, is that the the ancient Egyptians were much more advanced than what is they're given credit for, then tourism would increase even more because a different class of tourists would be attracted to those kind of sites.
Oh, yes. I do believe that because you can hear the music coming, so we are on air. Okay, that's good.
Okay.
But after that, we'll continue this.
The best of the conscious minds in the world. OMTimes Radio, your conscious lifestyle on steroids. Simone Milasas would like you to know that business can be fun, which is why she wrote the book, Joy of Business. What if you could have the joy of business rather than the stress and struggle? Most of the time, the only thing stopping you from a thriving business is you. In the Joy of Business book, Simone gives you access consciousness tools and pragmatic ways to get out of your own way and to create the business, life, and living you know is possible and beyond what this reality says is achievable. Business is joy. It's creation. It's generative. It can be the adventure of living. You can purchase your copy of the book through Amazon or Joy of Business website, www.accessjoyofbusiness.com. Join Elliot Jolish, the business therapist, each Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern for the Elliot Jolish Hour, as he interviews business experts on your behalf. And you're invited to email your business questions to questions@ecjgroup.com for answers, live, on air every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on the Elliot Jolish Hour.
Hey ladies, do you want to have that good hair day feeling all the time? Gentlemen, would you want your special someone to have that glow, letting you know she's feeling completely satisfied? This feeling and that glow can be yours by embracing your sexual power. So join me, Rachel Kenley, award-winning romance author, on the O-Spot. The O-Spot will guide you to that peak with guest interviews, book discussions, and conversations on the thrills of sexual empowerment. Put the zing back in your life. Come up and see me sometime on the O-Spot, live on Hump Day at 10 p.m. Eastern.
Host your show on IOM-FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM-FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community. Free your mind. Expand your soul. OMTimes Radio. IOM-FM.
Well, we're back with a very patient Chris Dunn. Now, since our time is a little bit limited and I want to get back into it, when you went to Egypt and you saw all the detail, as you say, the precision cuts, is this what alerted you to that, this was something else than supposedly tombs?
Yes, certainly. When I first visited Egypt, before that, I had done quite a bit of research, and I'd even had an article published in a magazine called Analog Science Fiction, Science Fact, and that was published in 1984, and it was called Advanced Machining in Ancient Egypt. But essentially, the work was based on William Flinders Petrie's observation and his writings, in what he described in a book called Pyramids and Temples of Giza, and also Peter Tompkins' book, Secrets of the Great Pyramid. So without even going to Egypt, I had studied those works and other works, and concluded that from what Petrie described, and he was the son of an engineer and a surveyor himself, a professional surveyor. And so he had an eye for the what you call the right brain kind of attributes of the monuments in Egypt. And he set about to take various measurements and made certain observations about artifacts that he studied. And what he described, he couldn't find answers for. He had no explanation for the sheer abilities and efficiency of some of the machining or the craftsmanship of the ancient Egyptians, such as drilling holes in granite, and the tool is advancing into the granite at 100,000th per revolution of the drill. It's a tubular drill. Mm-hmm. And so these features were astounding to him, and he left the question open. And so I studied it, and I thought that I had the answer in advanced machining in ancient Egypt. And it was published, and it got a lot of attention, a lot of criticism, pros and cons, but along with that article, I was also writing a book on the Great Pyramid and what I felt was the true purpose of the Great Pyramid. But then in 1986, when I traveled to Egypt, what I had studied in Petrie's work and what there was so much more that he did not address and that spoke to me that in 86 I determined that the next time I went to Egypt I would have to take some measuring instruments to determine the quality of some of the artifacts that I was looking at. It was quite amazing. So,
no, go ahead.
No, that's all right. You have another question?
Yeah, in the Keys of Power Plant, what besides when we were talking before that, when we were talking about the shafts, I had questions. How did they get those shafts in there? And you believe that the shafts were already manufactured?
Yes, all the interior features were crafted out of individual stones. So if there were like the small shafts that go from the Queen's Chamber and the King's Chamber. The King's Chamber, they go to the outside. The Queen's Chamber, when I started studying, nobody knew where they exited or even if they did exit. But these shafts are only about 8 inches wide. And in the Queen's Chamber, they're about 8 inches square. But they were created, they were cut into the blocks and then assembled into the pyramid to form the shaft and the alignment that they eventually had.
What amazes me also, like I was telling you, I was always thought of Egypt as very, the spiritual. And I always thought they were tombs. I mean, this is where my perception came until I started reading this information and discovered, this is different because I can't believe I can believe it, but it amazes me when you were saying about the use of chemicals or acids.
Yeah.
It's like, where did that come from? Where did that knowledge come from? I'm trying to think of these Egyptians, first it amazes me, all right, like, how did they move these things, and, how did they cut the square blocks and how did they do all these things? And then you bring up, chemistry. I'm like, my God.
Well, there are a lot of questions and there are potential answers, but even those answers leave us with more questions.
Oh yeah, that's where I'm at.
But the basically to get to the fundamental switch in your understanding, and that is how do you switch over from believing that the pyramids were tombs to believing they were something different. And for me, it was actually while I was reading Peter Tompkins' book, because I didn't know any of the details or the technical details about the Great Pyramid until I read that book. I mean, my understanding was pretty much the same as any other person who had read history in school. It just gives a superficial account of the Great Pyramid. Unless you get into Egyptology, then you begin to learn in more detail what Egyptologists have written over the years about the Egyptian culture and their monuments. But for me, after reading Tompkins' book and also Petrie, and I began to question the tomb theory, because what we have with the Great Pyramid is probably the most accurate building that had ever been constructed on the planet in terms of its precision, accuracy, quality, the size of it, the alignment with true north, some of the features that was built into it. Covers 13 acres. The 13 acres was flat within 7/8 of an inch, with the exception of a raised part in the center. So the outer casing, the base casing blocks on the outside were within 7/8 of an inch on a platform. And modern specs, building codes would allow over that area would allow about 15 inches over 13 acres. So it's a considerable achievement for an ancient society. But then what they did was that they built this massive pyramid containing 2.3 million blocks of stone, maybe more. And a lot of the stones, the casing stones, were fitted within 10,000ths of an inch, and the shafts on the inside, like the descending passage, is within the thickness of a thumbnail of being absolutely straight, and over 350 feet down into the bedrock, only 1/4 of an inch out of alignment over the entire length of the passageway. And similarly, on the interior, you have these different chambers and shafts that also displayed the same kind of quality, the same kind of accuracy and precision. And it occurred to me that, you begin to get an understanding, especially if you have worked with your hands and you've worked in industry, and you know what it's like, to marshal a workforce, and for a workforce to work together under the direction of engineers, technicians, and things of that nature. That what we had in the past was a civilization that was highly organized, highly intelligent, and very accomplished in manufacturing, quarrying, and cutting stone, and assembling stone into different structures. And it seemed that it was at that point where the evidence in front of me actually superseded the very, very simple explanation given by Egyptologists that it was a tomb. It seemed that a culture that had with that kind of intelligence and that kind of ability wouldn't support the construction of such an edifice just to house a single body. And not only that, but all the different features on the inside didn't support the theory about a pharaoh being buried there. Even if you ignore the fact that they didn't find any mummies in the pyramids, they didn't find any original burials in any of the pyramids in Egypt. So here you have a theory that is not supported by the evidence, and the lack of evidence is also kind of unsupporting of that particular theory.
Yeah, like I said before the next break already, what do you think the purpose of this pyramid, the Great Pyramid, was? As a generator?
Yes, it occurred to me that what we, in our civilization, most cultures, when they undertake a project of such magnitude, they expect something out of it. There has to be some return on their investment. And all the features of the Great Pyramid seem to me that it was there to provide energy to the civilization that built it, and that was their return on investment.
Well, we'll have to continue this after the next.
Bringing you the best of the conscious minds in the world. OMTimes Radio, your conscious lifestyle on steroids. As difficult as it is to believe, there are places in Africa where human traffickers sell albino children and their body parts for use in magic rituals. Humanity Healing International is actively working in Uganda to change this paradigm. The Albino Rescue Project finds albino children who are at risk and places them in safe schools and environments where they can learn and grow free from fear. To learn more or to sponsor a child, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
If you remember living fearlessly, joyfully, and in a world filled with adventure, happiness, pleasure, and unbridled living, then this show is for you. Join me, Dame Nicole Brandon, as I bring you the world's top experts in wealth, creativity, flow, seat-edging technology, space, wellness, health, love, lust, and passion, all merging together each week here at the Hub of Happiness. Mondays at 6 p.m. Pacific Time and 9 p.m. Eastern Time on Passionate Living, where you can ride on the magic carpet ride of living and learn how to lead a passionately wild, exciting, and outrageously amazing life.
Live with medium Lisa Phoenix, Mediumship Messages and Musings, explores mediumship and all things metaphysical. Lisa Phoenix invites you to reach above and beyond your everyday experiences to explore new dimensions in the spirit world. She will do live readings to connect callers to their loved ones in spirit, shares engaging stories and teachings from her own personal experience, and will have intriguing conversations with other mediums, spiritual teachers, and healers to help you understand the metaphysical world so you can connect to these forces in your day-to-day life. Join your host on this magical and metaphysical journey into the world of spirit every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time.
Being a radio host on IOM-FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network. Free your mind. Expand your soul. OMTimes Radio, IOM-FM.
We're back with Chris Dunn, and there's so much information. There's, his one book on the Giza power plant is a wealth of knowledge that we're only able to touch upon in this short hour. So now we've seen, from your perception, through your eyes looking at the pyramid, as a manufactured building, an energy source. Let's say how much you would say similar to almost like the atomic power buildings that they have. I mean, not with that energy, but with the same intent.
No, not the nuclear. I mean, everything is related. I mean, atoms certainly come into play. They come into play with everything that we do, but the not nuclear.
No, not nuclear.
No,
But the same intent of creating a building to create energy or be a power source.
actually, it doesn't create energy the way I describe it. It transduces energy. It changes it from one form to another. So the energy is actually the earth energy. It's the seismic stresses that build up in the Earth's plate, and though the pyramid is driven to harmonize with the planet, and then the energy within the Earth feeds into the pyramid. That is mechanical energy, vibrational energy, which then is converted to airborne sound in the pyramid, in the Grand Gallery, and also the so-called King's Chamber, which is made out of 100% granite, rose quartz granite from Aswan, which has 55% silicon quartz crystal. So the arrangements within the arrangements of these passages and these shafts and chambers within the Great Pyramid allow for the production of energy, vibrational energy, which converts to a electromagnetic energy by driving the granite to a higher energy state of vibration. That energy then is transferred into a gas. And you talked earlier about what about these chemicals that we're talking about? And the evidence for the chemicals is in the Queen's Chamber, which is the middle chamber in the Great Pyramid. And in this chamber, the early explorers found that it was coated with 1 inch of salt or more. And when they discovered the shafts from the Queen's Chamber, they discovered that even in these shafts you had signs of erosion in one shaft, and then a certain substance coated on the walls of the opposite shaft. So all of the and also the smell that early explorers experienced when they went into this chamber seemed to indicate that there was a chemical process going on there. Why hydrogen? The hydrogen is probably the most common element in the universe, and it bombards the microwave from hydrogen bombards the planet every day. It's about a wavelength of 21 centimeters. In fact, it is speculated that if ET is ever going to contact us, they will use that as a carrier wave, the 21 centimeters, because it is the most common element in the universe. And hydrogen at 21 centimeters is 8.309 inches. The northern shaft in the King's Chamber was 8.4 inches by 4.8 inches, which would serve as a suitable waveguide. But it gets into more detail in my book, The Giza Power. Yeah. But essentially, the short version is that the Great Pyramid was built very precisely, and it functioned, I'd say, principally as almost like a musical instrument, in that it resonated with certain frequencies, and it drove the planet to harmonize at particular frequencies, and at the same time drawing off destructive stresses in the Earth's plate. So out in California, a well-built pyramid near the fault, so the San Andreas Fault, may do a lot of good.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking, listening to you, amazing, was the Egyptians must since have pinpointed that area, the Giza Plateau, as a specific area to put the pyramid, to work with as you said, the energy of the earth.
Yeah.
So it seems like it was very pinpointed of all the places they could have put it.
Yes.
There was a particular reason of putting it there. So, moving on, like I said, there's so much I'd like to talk about, so little time. I like to talk about Gantenbrink's door.
Yeah, that's a fascinating piece of research. When I started writing the Giza power plant, we knew about the southern shaft in the Queen's Chamber and the northern shaft, but we didn't know where they exited on the outside. Rudolf Gantenbrink is a German robotics engineer, and he was hired by his company was hired, I think, by the German mission in Cairo to do some cleaning on the inside of these shafts, because they specialized in these small robots that can go into small places.
Mm-hmm.
And so he designed a robot to do that. But, he was also, it seems like anybody who gets close to the pyramid, it draws people in, and they become fascinated by its history and by the mystery that surrounds it, and they want to know more. And Gantenbrink was no exception. He knew about the southern shaft in the Queen's Chamber. He knew also that nobody knew where it exited on the outside, and he thought that one of his robots could answer that question.
Yeah.
So he got permission to build another robot to actually explore the southern shaft in the Queen's Chamber. This was in 1993. And his robot entered the shaft and went up the shaft and found that the shaft was blocked at the end, and there was a limestone plate, and through the plate were two metal fittings that came into the shaft. So that was in 1993. He tried to go up the northern shaft, but found that there were some obstacles in his way. Somebody had evidently shoved a pole up there at one time, trying to retrieve anything that may exist there, but the pole got stuck in a bend, and his robot couldn't navigate around over that pole, so he had to withdraw his robot and hopefully wait for another day to do that. But ultimately, he fell out of favor with the powers that be on the Giza Plateau, particularly the Allayah.
Yeah.
And so he became persona non grata, and basically wasn't allowed to proceed any further with that. The interesting thing about the southern shaft, though, and Gantenbrink's door, is that the shafts now, as we look at the original design of the shaft and the pyramid, it wasn't just blocked on one end, but it was it wasn't until 1872 that these shafts were actually discovered by Wayman Dixon, and because they were not completed, they did not penetrate fully into the chamber. They were cut short, about 5 inches on the block, which was used to form the wall of the inside of the Queen's Chamber. So that is another big question. Why would they build these? Why would they construct these shafts, which would take a lot more work and thought and to do if they weren't going to be connected to anything on either end. So, but in the Giza power plant theory, those features actually support the theory, and that they were used to deliver chemicals to the chamber, and those chemicals mixed and created hydrogen. So the mystery for me seemed to have been solved, but it's the tomb that people are still looking for Khufu's tomb inside the grave.
Well, I guess they're always going to be looking.
Yeah.
Isn't there there's more evidence? I mean, he's gone past that, per se, the door that they have labeled it now, and seen something on the other side.
Right. Well, they had another group who built a robot, and in 2001, they drilled a hole through Gantenbrink's door.
And we'll have to go on that on the final 15 minutes. All right, we'll come back.
Okay.
Bringing you the best of the conscious minds in the world. OMTimes Radio, your conscious lifestyle on steroids. Have you ever wondered how to change your love paradigm? The secret key is finding a love partnership, not just a regular connection. How do you find these? Through conscious relationships. Ascending Hearts Dating is a dating site for people like you that believes in second chances and a different type of spiritual connection. Try Ascending Hearts for free today at ascendinghearts.com and change your love paradigm. Ascending Hearts, the premier dating community for the spiritually awake.
The name is Bond. James Bond.
No, the name is Joe. The Joe Show. And we are returning back for our 9th season here on OMTimes Radio. So tune in every Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, on OMTimes.com/mobile. You can take us wherever you go. Yeah!
This is Terry Van Horn, and I want to invite you to join me for my weekly radio show, Hailing Light, on OMTimes Radio, every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On Hailing Light, we want to bring love, light, and blessings into your world. You can find out more about us at www.healinglightonline.com. Blessings.
Host your show on IOM-FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM-FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community. Free your mind. Expand your soul. OMTimes Radio. IOM-FM.
We're back with Chris Dunn, and we're going to try to bring forth a little bit more about Gantenbrink's store. On the other side, you said it was another company or another group of scientists that went through that door?
Yes, I think it was a group from Leeds University, and they. I'm sorry, that was a later one. In 2001. It was a company called iRobot, and they built what they called the Pyramid Explorer, and they had a camera. They drilled a hole through the door and pushed a camera through there, but the camera was one directional. The lighting wasn't very good, so they really couldn't see very much behind it. However, the next time. The following day, after the first exploration in the southern shaft, they were able to go up the northern shaft, and they found the same blockage at the end of the northern shaft with the two metal fittings coming through it, and except these fittings had a different look to them. And the look that they had was, one looked like it had a metal coating on it, a white, white coating on it. So that tends to fit within the power plant theory, or the theory that they were feeding chemicals into the Queen's chamber because of the characteristics of these metal rods. It's almost like an electroplating process.
What I found interesting was they found symbols.
Yes, that was in 2011 when the Leeds University team sent a robot up the southern shaft, and they were able to articulate the camera after they poked it through the existing hole. They were able to turn it around and look backwards and upwards, and they looked at the back of the block, and they saw that the end of the fittings were curled and seemed to go back into the back of the Gantenbrink's door. And then there were other features, such as there were these symbols on the floor that, for me, they looked like electrical symbols. And so what I did, it was around that time that Ancient Aliens, or Prometheus Entertainment, who produced the Ancient Aliens series, they wanted more information from me on the pyramid power plant theory, and so I thought that would be a good opportunity for me to build a scale model of the Gantenbrink store and demonstrate how it worked, and also to be able to mix the chemicals that I proposed were used to create the hydrogen. So I demonstrated both those features for one of their episodes. And it worked as I described in my book. Everything worked perfectly.
Well, I think what, and by the way, I saw that episode. That's to my husband. We were.
That's great.
The symbols. I think I've always been curious that the Egyptians were they left records all over the place. But there was nothing to do with this technology. But some of your ideas about the symbols, if you open your mind to them, and like you said, they can rewrite history, that they did leave information, almost like records of how to maintain it, or as you...
Yes, I think the symbols basically describe the polarity and the assembly of the door, and essentially what you have is what looks like a twisted pair of wires coming out of a conduit on one, and then two other symbols where you have, they look like the number 5. It's like kind of like a loop. And then there is a line that is drawn on the floor right next to one of the pins. I call them electrodes. So next to one of the electrodes, you have this line. And so basically what they were doing was they were showing the assembly of the pins, the electrical connections, and the polarity. And it's very clear, even when you look at the photographs of the back of the pins, the door, where you can see that there is erosion on one of the pins, but not the other. It seems like, those conditions indicate the polarity of the anode and the cathode. So you have, what the cathode, which would be giving off electrons to the anode, and there would be a chemical involved. So you would have some kind of a reaction with the anode.
It's it just opens up the field for looking at all this Egyptian writing differently. I mean, really, on parts of it, because if you're on your work, you expand the possibilities of what the pyramids are.
Yes, I think though what we have to do is we have to separate out what is what is actually contemporaneous with the pyramids, though, the construction of the pyramids and the construction of the temples. And when you go to all these different sites, you get different, a confusing mix of information and hieroglyphs. Mm. So the pyramid builders and the temple builders, the statue builders, were using tools that were very precise. Their reliefs have a high quality to them. And they're very difficult. They would be very difficult to achieve by simply using a hammer and a chisel, whether it's a stone chisel or a metal chisel. In fact, impossible to achieve, some of them.
What I was, I was discussing all of this with my husband when we were talking about the obelisks. Okay.
Yes, well, I was just going to mention that. The obelisks are a great example of that, where you have both kinds. You have very crude scratches that were put on by a later culture, and then you have the original, the people who actually quarried it and crafted it to perfection, and applied all these different sunken reliefs that show up beautifully. And they're very precise, and the quality is extraordinary. But then somewhere on the obelisk, you'll find that somebody came along later, and you have these really shallow scratches, and there's no pretense to precision or quality at all. Mm-hmm. But they still tell a story. And so the question is, which story are we being taught? And so when we ask the question, do these inscriptions in the Great Pyramid, do they mean that we could use ancient glyphs to reinterpret the pyramids? My response is that it depends which reliefs or which hieroglyphs we select to try to interpret, because some of them may have nothing to do with the original culture.
Yeah, I was, like I said, we only have a few minutes, and I know we only touched upon things, but, as you said, we answer, we come up with some questions and brings out more questions.
Yeah.
To manufacture anything, you need tools, you need templates. Where did these disappear? Are they in some kind of amazing library in the Smithsonian or hidden away?
That's an excellent question. We know that they had to exist, otherwise the artifacts wouldn't exist. Most of the conversation has been about what tools were used to cut these artifacts. But as any craftsman knows, it's not just the tools used to cut something, but also the tools to measure them, and where are the measuring instruments that they used, because they were using they were working to a high order of precision, and they were doing it consistently. Mm-hmm. With many of these artifacts that we find, some really mysterious pieces that you find just sticking out of the sand on the Giza Plateau, or something in full view at Luxor, such as one of the wonderful statues of Ramses, all carved with great precision. And what tools did they use? What are the tools did they use to carve them? What tools did they use to measure them? We have to look at the stones. And I try to do that in my other book, The Lost Technologies of Ancient Egypt, specifically to address the geometry, and also the symmetry and precision that we find crafted into a lot of the statuary.
Yeah, I wasn't even able to get to that. That's a whole nother show. But no, thank you. And, your work opens my mind amazingly. And we've only touched upon things. So everybody, please check out Chris's books, The Giza Power Plant, The Lost Technologies of Ancient Egypt, and his website, www.gizapower.com. Thank you, Chris. Thank you for being with us.